Hey there friends, it's David Lightbringer, here to play tour guide of the strange and mysterious as we attempt to rank the 14 weirdest places and things in Westeros. Plus 3 honorable mentions, because it's hard to narrow this shit down. Frankly, Westeros is a pretty weird place. And that's what we'll be talking about today, the weirdest stuff that George Martin has thought of, Westeros edition. Counting down from weird to weirder, we'll discuss what makes each one of these wonders and marvels so mysterious. And then you guys can yell at me in the comments about why my rankings are terrible and scold me for leaving whatever I left off the list. In any case, I'll be moving very quickly here today so that this can be a short ranking video and not a 5-hour live stream. But I have made a produced video on pretty much all of these topics for those of you who want the full details on the theories that may explain some of these mysteries. So I'll link to those in the description below the video and then mention them where appropriate as we go. So with that said, let's get rolling. Alright, first honorable mention, first runner-up, the Oaken Seat. I've actually got an Origins of Highgarden video coming next week, so I'll just briefly mention a couple things, which is that the Oaken Seat is a living tree throne that is not described as being underground. And it's also described as being made out of an oak tree. We've only seen weirwood tree thrones, and they've only been underground, so this is all a little strange. Further complicating matters is the fact that Garth the Green is said to have grown both the Oaken Seat from a living oak and the 3 intertwined weirwoods called the Three Sisters in the Highgarden Godswood. We'll talk about this later in the video, but there are clues about the original weirwoods having green leaves instead of red. So the Oaken Seat may be a garbled memory of the original weirwoods, or it could just be that oak trees can also be used for magic. Either way, it's mysterious, and I'll cover that in next week's video. Alright, second honorable mention, it's Skagos. So Skagos is pretty weird. It does have unicorns and maybe cannibals. And the Skagosi are a little different than the rest of the First Men. They may have interbred with giants or perhaps the Ibonese, who descend from a taller race of hairy men from the continent of Essos. But essentially that's all some sort of weird A Song of Ice and Fire evolutionary family tree where giants and hairy men and humans and eventually children of the forest all branch off from a lost common ancestor or ancestors. And as for the unicorns, well, there have been many different one-horned creatures that have existed IRL in the real world, as is described in Ghost's vision of Shaggy Dog fighting one of these enormous one-horned goat creatures. And it's also worth noting that the unicorns are found everywhere that the descendants of the hairy men are. The most interesting part of Skagos is the future. What's going to happen with Rickon? Is he going to lead an army of unicorn-riding, skin-changing cannibal Skagosi onto the battlefield? And actually, me and Tim cooked up a pretty cool theory about how the Skagosi are going to help Rickon destroy House Frey. So check out our videos on that topic, and yeah, shout out to Skagos. It's pretty weird. And then our final honorable mention, first runner-up, it's Hardhome. That's right, tough crowd. Tough party. Hardhome couldn't even get in the door. Shirt and shoes required, sir. You're barefoot and burning. Anyway, I did make a Hardhome video, and the problem here really isn't that it's an unsolvable mystery, but rather that there are too many good answers. The first part of the mystery is actually pretty clear. The screaming sound coming from the caves, pretty obviously a gas leak, and that would explain the explosion and the fires. It's some version of a gas leak or volcanic activity plus a gas leak. Maybe there's magic involved too, but that's pretty much the story. Gas leaks in caves create screaming sounds, they echo back in the caves, it's a real thing that happens, so yeah, that part is straightforward. The mystery is who did it, and there are several answers. For example, Hardhome is kind of like a mini Doom, and it happened only 200 years before the Doom, so maybe it had something to do with either the Valyrians or the Faceless Men who helped pull off the Doom. Or maybe it was the Children of the Forest or the White Walkers, some sort of magical thing instigating it. Maybe the Wildlings blew themselves up, digging, mining in the caves. Or maybe the Night's Watch raided Hardhome and attacked them, although I don't really think there's a lot of evidence for that. And then there's this very conspicuous story about a maester who went to Hardhome and lived there for 3 years under the protection of Gorm the Wolf until Gorm died. Then the maester fled back to Old Town, wrote down everything he knew for about a year, and then went back to Hardhome and was never seen again. It's a pretty fishy story to just throw in there. So yeah, check out the Hardhome video for all those theories. But the bottom line is that it is a mystery with several good answers. Rhaegar, what in the world are you doing?
Well, Dave, this is a Valyrian Blade Master sensory deprivation training mask. I'm using the power of total darkness to hone my extra sense. Oh, what was that? To hone my extra sensory come on, perception.
No, Rhaegar, that's not. That's the most advanced sleep mask on the planet from Manta Sleep, who heard about how much I'd like to take naps, kindly agreed to sponsor this video, and sent me their pro sleep mask so I could join the pro nap movement.
Oh, really?
And it doesn't really look like you're cut out for a Valyrian Blade Master.
Well, perhaps if someone would stop overloading my sensories with all this chatter.
How's the mask, though? Is it comfy?
Oh, yes, it's amazing. There's no pressure on my eyelids, and I'm experiencing a 100% total blackout. Oh, My
Ooh,
goodness.
careful there.
Yes, I'm all right. The padding took the worst of it.
Here, toss that to me. Yeah, so it's made out of lightweight advanced materials for maximum breathability. These are the cups which are giving you total blackout, and they are C-shaped. They taper on the sides so that they are perfect for side sleepers like myself. And best of all, it is super duper easy to adjust. Look at that.
Oh, you know, it would be really cool if they made one with little speakers for the people who listen to podcasts as they fall asleep.
Oh yeah, you think so?
Yes, I do.
Well, so does Meant to Sleep. They do have a Bluetooth model, which does use ultra-thin, lightweight Bluetooth speakers, which is obviously perfect for all you nighttime David Lightbringer enjoyers out there, and we know you're out there, so that's the Bluetooth version. They also have an original version. This is the Pro version. They've also got a weighted sleeping mask, a silk sleeping mask, and an extra cool sleeping mask.
Oh, wow, they have a steam sleeping mask. That sounds positively luxuriant. Dave, let me do one. Dave? The Meant to Sleep Steam Sleep Mask uses warming beads in the orange eye cups to produce natural steam. So now you can combine the soothing power of heat therapy with the sensory relief of total darkness. This is perfect for clearing sinuses or moisturizing dry eyes. Now David Lightbringer doesn't have to drape a sock across his face to take his afternoon nap. Disgusting habit, by the way.
Hey, at least I used a clean sock. But yeah, I mean, this is a lot better.
So, friends, whether you're trying to block out the sun to take control of your circadian rhythms or training to be a Valerian Blade Master, you can visit the Meant to Sleep website and use the promo code DAVID to get 10% off. Simply follow the link below the video in the description to join the pro nap movement, like David Lightbringer just did. Although, David, you really should wake up and finish your video.
All right, coming in at number 14, it's Storm's End. Let the controversy begin. I'm sure some of you guys would have ranked this higher. However, I mostly think it's just a really well-built Andal castle with some cool older legends from the Dawn Age and Age of Heroes sort of glommed onto it. Now, it definitely does have those cool, magical anti-shadow wards that Melisandre runs into. And we see similar such anti-shadow wards at the Wall, at Bloodraven's Cave, and one assumes at Winterfell, probably, warding the crypts at least. And I would actually go further and say that all the old First Men castles that are built around Weirwoods are probably magically warded against the others who are shadows. So they also stop wights and shadow babies and things, but I think the others are the point. So yeah, those magical wards, not really that mysterious. And really the weirdest thing about Storm's End are the legends, the old legends that tie Bran the Builder or the Children of the Forest to the building of Storm's End. So obviously before the Andals came and built the modern castle, Storm's End was a significant place to the First Men, to the ancient Durrandon kings, who by the way, dress up like green men with the antlered crowns and are known to have commerce with the Children of the Forest in the Rainwood from time to time. So you kind of see what I mean. It mostly seems like a newer Andal castle built in a location with older legends from the Age of Heroes, when the First Men did have commerce with the Children of the Forest. And by have commerce with, I mean... Number 13, the Weirwood Thrones in the Eyrie. So several things are weird about this. First of all, why are Andal kings sitting in Weirwood thrones? Is this sort of a mockery of the conquered gods kind of thing? Like, oh, your wooden gods are only good to support my ass, my royal ass. But then you notice that they also have the Weirwood Moon Door and that they tried very hard to either grow or more likely transplant a Weirwood into the Godswood at the Eyrie. So yeah, why are these Andal kings so fixated on Weirwood stuff? And then as to the Weirwood thrones themselves, do they give people bad dreams? Meaning, does cut weirwood still have some sort of magical property? It seems like it might. Other significant places in Westeros where we see cut weirwood would be the Staff of the High Septon. It's a weirwood staff surmounted by a crystal orb. There's the giant white shield table in the Lord Commander's chamber in the White Sword Tower of the Kingsguard. There's a castle called the Bower, which is supposedly made entirely of weirwood. And then there's Castle White Walls and Castle Harrenhal, both of which are either damaged or torn down, and they had weirwood rafters. Obviously, there's a bunch of weirwood at the House of Black and White, the doors and the chairs. There's one weirwood door on the door to Tobomot's Forge in King's Landing. Don't know how he came by that. And then there's Bloodraven's arrows and weirwood bow, which is one of the best clues that cut weirwood could be magic, because why is Bloodraven using weirwood arrows? And Brandon Snow also may have thought, probably did think, that weirwood arrows could be used to slay dragons. And check out the Whited Torn Neil video for that story. That's a pretty cool story, actually. So yeah, less so the Moon Door, but those weirwood thrones that people are sitting in every day, there could be a lingering magical or psychic power to those. It certainly wouldn't surprise anybody, so we'll actually come back to this mystery later on the list. And then final question about the weirwood thrones and the Moon Door, where did the weirwood come from? Were these the trees they tried to transplant into the Godswood and then they gave up and hacked them up and turned them into thrones? Or were these weirwood trees felled by the original Andal conquerors of the Vale? That probably makes more sense. And in that case, the weirwood thrones would essentially be a sign of not less so a taunt, but more a sign of dominion over the first men whom they conquered. All right, number 12, Bloodraven's Cave. Not really one mystery, but a collection of mysteries, many of which are hard to answer. So I did make a video about this, Bloodraven's Cave, but yeah, why is it so far underground? It's hundreds and hundreds of feet underground. And the weirdest part about that is that the weirwood roots grow thicker and more plentiful, both thicker around and thicker together, the deeper that they go down. So that's one clue that the weirwood trees aren't really trees, and, there's more of them underground. There's some sort of fungus-like organism. Yeah, it's weird. Then we've got that underground river that goes down to a sunless sea, which shout out to Sam Coleridge and all that, but that's mysterious. Will Bran and company use that as an escape route? I tend to think that is possible. And then we've got all those Children of the Forest green seers on the long line of weirwood thrones that Bran discovers walking around in Hodor's body. They are mostly gone into the wood, but not quite. They react to the torch and one of them tries to talk, so what's up with that? Meaning, are those Children of the Forest running around piloting animals in Westeros? Or are those the Children of the Forest who became the others or something weird like that? You can really create a lot of cool theories off of those singers in those weirwood thrones. And then we have the question of why do the Children of the Forest need a human green seer when they clearly do have their own green seers? How many human three-eyed crows, so to speak, have there been before Bloodraven? Is he the first or is he the 67th in a long line of them? Maybe there's 79 of them, like the 79 Sentinels. Who knows? Who knows? So yeah, Bloodraven's Cave, many mysteries. Number 11, the Isle of Faces. So this was kind of a hard one to rank. It is very mysterious, but we kind of know what the answers are going to be like. So we don't know exactly what the green men are going to be, but we sort of do. They're going to be some Kernunos, clip-clopping horn folk like we saw in House of the Dragon, probably. They're going to be some sort of elf. They're going to be related to the Children of the Forest, probably. Hopefully we'll see one. I was very excited to see one on House of the Dragon. Next question, why did Hal and Reed go there right before the turning of Harrenhal? And then why did Rhaegar and Lyanna go to the Isle of Faces only a few months later after they disappeared following the turning of Harrenhal? That's what this calendar art seems to be showing, Rhaegar and Lyanna on the Isle of Faces. So that's very mysterious, and I did make a video about that specifically, but the answer is obvious. It has something to do with magic and prophecy and the Green Men and RLJ and all that stuff. All that stuff that's like one of the central mysteries of the story. So yeah, why did Rhaegar and Lyanna have to go talk to Green Men on the Isle of Faces? The more you think about it, the weirder it gets. And I actually did a whole live stream speculating about the idea that Lyanna may have been a skin changer or green seer who had her powers awakened on the Isle of Faces. There's really no reason why not. Her son Jon was a skin changer, so at least the latent ability would have been in her blood. And then final Isle of Faces mystery, the weirwood trees. This calendar art from Justin Sweet from just a year past seems to depict weirwood trees with faces that are not bleeding, and you'll notice there's nary a red leaf in sight. The leaves are a bit impressionist, but there's no red ones. So this would seem to be a non-bloody weirwood tree with a face. And the only other non-bloody weirwood face we've seen is at the Night Fort. It's the Black Gate under the Night Fort, and that weirwood face talks. So are there talking weirwood trees on the Isle of Faces that Rhaegar and Lyanna consulted with? It's getting pretty weird, as you can see. And then final question, what role will the Isle of Faces play in the endgame of the story? Probably something having to do with Bran, right? The Green Men and the Isle of Faces have been by far mentioned in his story the most. So if anyone's going to go there and see the Green Men, it'll probably be Bran. Although I do just want to mention that there could be certain foreshadowing for a dragon stopping by the Isle of Faces, because Adam Velaryon did that on a dragon, and there have been a couple of spectacular dragon fights over the God's Eye as well. And now that I think about it, Adam Velaryon is actually a noble bastard who gets legitimized, and that could be a direct Jon Snow parallel. And the other guy who might have visited the Isle of Faces would be Daemon Targaryen, who fell into the lake, and he's definitely got some parallels to Jon Snow. So yeah, maybe Jon will fly Bran to the Isle of Faces. That would be sweet, because Jon was talking about taking that horse ride with Bran when he gets back from the Wall. So maybe they'll have a dragon ride instead. All right, number 10, it's Greywater Watch. Definitely a weird place. And it's definitely a shout out to the book Howl's Moving Castle. Howland Reed lives in a moving castle, and a crannog is a real type of house. They are wood and thatch roofs built on stilts, usually over water or a swampy area. So yeah, how is Greywater Watch moving? Well, couple of options. One, they could have modified Cranogs that float and can be moved around and connected to one another and disconnected and floated somewhere else and reconnected. Or it could be that these houses are just torn down and rebuilt every so often. So Grey Water Watch, per se, might spend a few years in one part of the swamp, then be torn down and moved to a different part of the swamp before anybody finds out where it is. Then we have the lizard lions, which sound weird, but they're probably just some sort of fantasy world crocodile. And really the weirder idea here is that the marsh kings of Cranogmen days gone by are said to have ridden on the backs of these lizard lions. However, in a world with skin changing, that's less of a mystery. Any sort of beastmaster magic animal taming is probably being done through skin changing. And we do know that the Cranogmen grew close to the children of the forest and interbred with them and still manifest the green gifts to this day. So the weirdest idea of all with the Cranogmen, and I went into this in more detail in my Cranogmen video, is the fact that a lot of the things that are said about the Cranogmen, the way they're described and stuff, the Cranogmen racism, if you will, actually makes them sound like deep ones. Green skin, fishy smelling, can breathe underwater. Yeah, it's very suspicious. And there does seem to be a doom that came to Sarnath thing here, with the Cranogmen as the froggy men of Ib and Moat Cailin as Sarnath. And basically where you land with all that is that the Cranogmen seem to have interbred with both the Deep Ones and the Children of the Forest, which is why they are so weird. Alright, number 9 brings us back over to Storm's End, but it's not the castle. The weirder thing is out in the Rainwood, under the Rainwood. And I'm talking about those stone faces in the walls and the stone pillars, which seem to be stalactites and stalagmites that have grown together to form columns. And those are from the Arion Winds of Winter sample chapter. Just like Bloodraven's Cave, we're hundreds of feet underground, and when Arion sees the faces carved in stone, she thinks, this is a place of the Children of the Forest. So they remind her of weird faces, but they're carved in stone. That's weird, first of all, because we've never seen the Children of the Forest do that. They do flint knap a little obsidian from time to time, but yeah, we've only seen them carve faces we haven't seen them carve any faces, but we've only seen the carved faces in the trees. So can stone faces be used for magic? Were these humans carving stone in imitation of the children? Or was this the work of the Old Ones from Lang, who might be the same thing as the Green Men, and the Old Ones from Lang carved stone cities underground? And I'm not kidding. Not kidding at all. This is a credible theory. Check out Secret Origins of the Green Men, Isle of Lang. Because, yeah, the Green Men may have come from there, and maybe the same thing as the Old Ones, quote unquote. So this could have been their work, and that's very mysterious. All right, number 8. This may be a little bit of a curveball for some of you, but hear me out. The Black Pond in the Winterfell Godswood. It's just a little pond, but it's weird. Why is it cold? This entire Godswood is steaming from all the pools, all the hot springs. They're everywhere. Except for right in front of the Weirwood, there's this black pond that is super duper deep. It's said to be bottomless, which obviously isn't true, but it does seem to be a deep pond. And again, why is it cold? Why is it black, quote unquote? Well, the first clue is the children's story, the short story called The Ice Dragon that George wrote all the way back in 1980, the year I was born. And in the book The Ice Dragon is the good dragon. And the thing about ice dragons when they are slain is that they melt into a puddle. But that puddle doesn't disappear, it forms a pond, a cold pond. And in the book The Ice Dragon, the heroic ice dragon, spoiler alert, when he's saved the day and ready to lay down his burden, he does melt into a cold pond on the farm of the main character Adar, which is the equivalent of Winterfell in this story. So, this could just be an homage, just a nod to his previous book, but it could be a melted ice dragon, and that would be bonkers if there's a melted ice dragon in the Winterfell Godswood. Is it going to reformulate and come out of the pond? Even if it doesn't, it's still really weird. And if it's not meant to be a melted ice dragon, then again, why is it cold? There just isn't another explanation. And then the other mystery about the pond is that it can be used to feed blood to the Greenseers hooked up to Weirwoods anywhere in Westeros. And we know that, of course, because Bran Stark, in the present time, tasted the blood of a sacrifice at the Winterfell heart tree that took place centuries in the past. So that's both time travel and some sort of remote distance magic, because Bran's all the way up in Bloodraven's Cave, and it makes the pond magical and part of this whole process. The Weirwood is drinking blood through the pond. It seems like Ned's sacred ritual of cleansing the sacrifice's blood off of ice in the pond is some sort of softened, fallen cargo cult form of the original tradition, which was obviously to slash their throat and, feed the fresh blood into the pond. Which makes one wonder, how many bodies weighted down with stones are at the bottom of that pond. The little kids are swimming around in it. I don't know. Just a thought. But yeah, it's a tradition. It's been going on for centuries. And the big question is, what are the weirwoods and the greenseers doing with all the blood? Obviously, the trees are using it as sap. But is it somehow supplying the magical mana for greenseers like Bran to do their magic with? Or is the blood feeding the weirwoods, which are acting like the wards on the prison of the others? That would be a Wheel of Time concept, the wards on the Dark One's prison. Maybe the weirwoods are the wards keeping the others in the heart of winter and keeping the wall up. So we gotta feed them blood. Shout out to Michael Talks About Stuff. He's talked about this stuff a lot. All right, we're getting down to business now. The top 7 weirdest things in Westeros. At this point, you guys can play along by trying to guess what's left on the list and what might be number 1. And guys, do let me know in the comments what you think of this format of video. If you liked this one, we definitely can do a similar one for Essos. Essos and Sothorios, of course. All right, coming in at number 7, it's Dawn, which is weirder than you think. Because Dawn by itself basically leads to Great Empire of the Dawn theory. So it's white Valyrian steel that's in Westeros in the Dawn Age, or the Age of Heroes. That's weird. Who's making white Valyrian steel? The Valyrians never made white Valyrian steel, and Valyria isn't thought to have existed in the Dawn Age. Then we have the Danes, who have quasi-Valyrian looks, purple eyes, and silverish hair. But George has clarified that they are not related to the Targaryens, and they are not Valyrians. Meanwhile, the Danes themselves have an origin story that says they came to Westeros from somewhere else. And so you put all that together, and that means there were dragon lords that existed before Valyria and came to Westeros with a magic sword that's probably Lightbringer back in the Dawn Age. And that's kind of the clue, probably Lightbringer. Lightbringer is a legend from Ashai, but it's obviously relevant to the main story, with everyone looking for Azor Ahai Reborn in the form of Dany and Jon and somebody else. Maybe Euron, maybe Tyrion, maybe Hot Pie. So yeah, Dawn by itself is an artifact which leads to a lot of mysteries, very important mysteries. And obviously all this is related to the Long Night. And the mysteries don't stop there. What have the Danes been doing for 10,000 years, just safeguarding Lightbringer like the stewards of Gondor? There's obviously a story behind that. Was the last hero a Dane, or was the last hero a Stark? Is there a connection between the Danes and Starks? And then moving on to the main plot, are we going to need Dawn again? George says that it is in Starfall, quote unquote, waiting for a new Sword of the Morning to rise. I think the foreshadowing points towards Jon wielding it, even though he's not officially a Dane. And I have explained all that in the videos Jon, Azor Ahai, Dawn and Lightbringer, and Who Was the Last Hero. So check those out for more. But yeah, Dawn was present at Jon's birth at the Tower of Joy. And I also think that Darkstar is actually going to steal Dawn. It's not going to be that a new Sword of the Morning is going to rise. Sorry, Edric Dane, 5-year gap is gone. Darkstar is going to steal it and join Fagon's Kingsguard. And then get 86th. And eventually the sword will get to Jon. So yeah, check out those videos for more. And moving on. All right, so number 6, the Black Gate. It's one of the weirdest things in Westeros, for sure. It's the only talking weirwood face that we've ever seen. As I mentioned, maybe there's some on the Isle of Faces, but there's definitely one about 80 to 100 feet underground beneath the Night Fort, in the side of a well. And not only does it talk, it only accepts the Night's Watch oaths as a passcode, and then it opens its face and lets you walk through to the other side of the wall. So check out my Bran the Builder for all my Blackgate theories, but yeah, did the Blackgate used to be a person? Are there more of them under other castles under the wall? What's on the other side of the Weir face? Is it a Weir butt or just another face? Has it been used by Night's Watch brothers, such as Night's King, to smuggle babies to the others? I think the biggest mystery is, does it have a Weir butt? What's on the other side? But let me know what you think. It's definitely a weird one, and in case you didn't miss the implication, I think that Bran the Builder became the Black Gate, which is really weird. So yeah, check out that video. All right, number 5, it's the Fused Stone Fortress beneath the High Tower on Battle Isle at Old Town. It's kind of mysterious and kind of not, simply because I do have a very developed theory that explains most of it. Essentially, the problem here is that it is made out of fused black dragonstone, such as the Valyrians used all over the place, but it's in Westeros under the oldest versions of the High Tower, which means it's pre-Long Night, and thus pre-Valyria. Now, as I mentioned, Dawn and the Danes kind of indicate that dragon lords did exist before Valyria and came to Westeros very near Old Town. So if you buy Great Empire of the Dawn theory, this is less mysterious. And as always, big thanks to artist Chetan Biswas, 3D graphic designer Chetan Biswas, who rendered the High Tower and the Fewstone Fortress for our channel here, and really for all the fandom. And of course, thanks to my Patreon supporters for supporting me and enabling me to commission the High Tower. So it is glorious. We do love to look at it. But the weirdest thing about the Fewstone Fortress, it's definitely the tunnels. The tunnels are winding and carved into the rock. They're maze-like corridors, and the first high towers lived in them. So are they dragon carved? Were there fireworms somehow on Battle Isle? That's weird. Or are they Deep One tunnels? Are they perhaps the oldest thing on Battle Isle, even predating the fortress? I explored all that in the Origins of Old Town video, and let me know what you think, but there's not really a good explanation. They're weird. And even though we've been talking about Great Empire of the Dawn theory for many years, we shouldn't forget the shock that we felt when we read the Old Town section back in 2014 in the World of Ice and Fire. And it's describing this mysterious Fewstone fortress that the Maesters can't explain that's under the oldest versions of the High Tower. And maybe there were dragons roosting on it. And maybe the High Towers descend from seafarers who came here before the first men. That whole section pretty much was a brain popper. So yeah, Fewstone Fortress on Battle Isle, number 5. All right, we're down to our final 4, and these choices were really hard. So again, feel free to roast me in the comments. But yeah, I struggled. Number 4, the Seastone Chair. Now, in one sense, fantasy story, black, magical weirdo stone is kind of par for the course. However, when we stop to think about what the oily black stone actually is in A Song of Ice and Fire, it gets weird really quick. So it's sometimes mistakenly said that the oily black stone only comes into the story in the World of Ice and Fire. That is not true, of course. The Seastone Chair is mentioned in Theon's first chapter in A Clash of Kings. But it is true that in the World of Ice and Fire, we hear about a lot more oily black stone. So Ashai is a city built entirely of oily black stone. Yin is some sort of jungle fortress city built entirely of oily black stone. The nearby Isle of Toads has a 40-foot high toad idol carved out of oily black stone. And there's one more maybe, which I'll mention in a moment. So yeah, what is this oily black stone? It could be meteorite stone. I do, of course, have a theory about the long night being caused by moon meteors. And the latest version of that is in the George's Secret Story video. But even without my theory, we do, of course, have the Bloodstone Emperor in Ashai worshipping a black meteorite at the time of the long night, as well as dawn being made from a meteorite and other legends about falling stars. The oily black stone certainly seems cursed and Lovecraftian, especially the Seastone Chair. Think a color out of space here. So yeah, the oily black stone very well could be cursed meteorite stone. And that's probably the least weird explanation for it. Other explanations include the famous Crowfood's Daughter of the Disputed Lands explanation, which is that it is petrified shade of the evening wood. When a weirwood tree dies, it petrifies in place and turns into pale stone. So maybe the shade of the evening trees, whose shade drink is described as black and oily, maybe if those petrify, it turns into oily black stone. It makes a lot of sense. I tend to think the oily stone is meteorite stone and that it's what created the shade trees. So both of us think there's a relationship, and we've each got a theory about it going one direction or the other. But then there are, again, the Deep One connections, the obvious Deep One connections. It's a Cthulhu idol. And that Isle of Toads idol, that is another Lovecraftian deity, which has an unpronounceable name that I'll put on the screen and which Grey Waste Tim would know by heart. So they're kind of a pair, the Isle of Toads statue and the Kraken statue. And the people on the Isle of Toads are Deep One hybrids. Clearly, they are all fished out. So yeah, the Seastone Chair could be a mysterious idol hauled out of the depths of the sea and left on the shores of Old Wick for the first Ironborn to find and eventually form a Deep Ones cult around. I think they used it as an altar to give children to the Deep Ones. And now the Greyjoys are sitting on it because the Ironborn kings are really just sacrifices to the Deep Ones. You see how that works. Anyway, check out my Seastone Chair and Deep Ones and Lord Reaper videos for more on the Seastone Chair. It's very mysterious. There's a lot to talk about. And perhaps the weirdest idea is that it is connected both to the Deep Ones and to Ashai. Ashai is already tied to Azor High, Bloodstone Emperor, and dragon stuff, and maybe they had maybe the Blood Mages had Congress with the Deep Ones there too. I mean, it's getting really weird. But all of that is implied by the Seastone Chair, which is made out of the same stuff Ashai is made out of, but is clearly a Deep One's idol. And then real quickly, why was it left on Old Wick for the first men to find? And why was it at some point moved over to Pike? And if someone else wins the Kingsmoot election, is the Seastone Chair moved from Pike over to the Castle of the Winter? I'd really like to know. Okay, number 3, and perhaps number 1 in my heart, it's Moat Cailin. I love Moat Cailin because it's very obviously not a first-man construction. We know that it is super duper old because it was built before whatever catastrophe flooded the neck. It used to have 20 towers and a curtain wall, and now it's only got 3, with one of them listing badly. So pretty clearly this castle was built when the neck was not a swamp, and then something bad happened and the castle, burned down, fell over, and sank into the swamp. But as for the castle itself, it's built out of cottage-sized megalithic blocks of black basalt. Cottage-sized, so bigger than the room you're sitting in probably. And they are stacked up high. The curtain wall was 80 feet high, and the towers are even taller. So yeah, the first men at this time were only building little ring forts and very primitive castles. They certainly were not building megalithic constructions. There's just nothing like Moat Cailin anywhere else in Westeros. However, it is very similar to the description of Yin in Sothoryos. Yin is also described as a fortress. It's also built out of megalithic black blocks of stone, and at Yin it is oily black stone. So Moat Cailin is black basalt. However, there is that one Theon quote where it is described as looking like oily black stone after the rain. So why would George do that? Why would he describe Moat Cailin looking like oily stone? And why is Yin the only thing that's anything like it anywhere in the world? And just to give you the very, very short version of what I think is the answer, basically I think the Deep Ones were in Westeros first. Eons and eons before any First Men. And I think a lot of the First Men ended up running into the Deep Ones all along the coast and getting fished out, getting farmed. We see evidence of that all up and down the coast. Check out the Deep Ones video. And I think Moat Cailin was a stronghold. It was basically a human Deep One hybrid slavery temple. The modern day parallel would be Harrenhal, a castle built out of black stone by an Ironborn, where he enslaved all the local people and made them work for him. So basically, I think Moat Cailin was a Deep One's version of that. And some of those clues are based on the fact that the Cranogmen are frog people living right by the ruined castle. So this is all Doom that came to Sarnath stuff. And I'll just quickly toss in the Cranogmen video to the pile of Deep Ones videos and oily stone videos, for those who are interested, of course. And then we've also got the Hammer of the Waters legend, which places the Children of the Forest in a tower at Moat Cailin, which is not really a place that we picture Children of the Forest hanging out in black castles, to call down the Hammer of the Waters, even though a different legend has them on the Isle of Faces to do that. So was that the same Hammer event? Was it different Hammer events? Why are the children in that castle? It's all pretty confused. So Moat Cailin, very mysterious. All right, coming in at number 2, it's Nagga's Bones. Nagga's Bones, there's just layers of friggin' weird here. So the first mystery is figuring out that this is all petrified weirwood. And then the next step is figuring out that not only is this weirwood, but in fact, this is the weirwood ribbing of a giant weirwood ark that was beached, flipped over, and used to create the beams and rafters of the Grey King's temple. This follows actual Norse tradition of sometimes turning expired boat hulls into long haul ceilings, or just constructing long hulls with the same construction techniques that they would use to make boat hulls. But this is the weirwood version. And of course, there is a myth about Grey King carving the first longship from the pale demon tree Ig, which is said to consume human flesh. So this is all very obvious weirwood stuff. The weirwoods, flesh-eating demon trees, they're pale, and they are based on Yggdrasil, the Norse world tree. So yeah, Grey King is said to have made a boat out of weirwood, and here it is. It's Nagga's ribs. So that's weird, but it gets weirder because why is there a weirwood ark here? Why did someone build a weirwood ark? Where was it built? Were these Westerosi weirwoods? The Grey King legend has him coming from across the Sunset Sea. So maybe from a Shai or somewhere in the Grey Waste, who knows? That makes us wonder, were there weirwoods over there in a Shai? That would be weird, and even if he sailed to Westeros and made the ark here, that would still be strange. Why make an ark out of weirwood? After all, there's only a, couple century long shelf life on a weirwood ark before it turns to stone. Now, the clues around the Grey King do indicate that he was an active green seer, because his throne was made from Nagga's jaws and his crown from Nagga's fangs. But if Nagga's ribs are really weirwood, then he's sitting in a weirwood throne with a weirwood crown, and that just makes him a green seer. And that brings me back to the question of, can cut weirwood still be used for magic? So again, just to give you my theory on this, I think these weirwood trees were saved from a Shai before the Long Night disaster, and the Grey King made an ark out of the weirwoods to save them. He sailed to Westeros, and when he flipped that thing over and planted it into the ground, it was like he was planting those weirwood tree beams back into the ground. Now, over at the Eyrie, they couldn't figure out how to transplant a weirwood, but I'm guessing the Grey King cracked the secret, which is, of course, water the thing with blood. How else? And of course, the clue about this is from the tale of Euron Redhand. He's a very dastardly Ironborn king who killed 13 kings and 50 drowned priests at a Kingsmoot and made Nagga's ribs run red with blood. So basically, this historical figure is a clue. He's named after Euron Greyjoy, who sailed from Asshai to the Iron Islands, and his nickname Redhand alludes to the red hand leaves of the weirwood tree. So he's basically a clue about the Grey King being a magician sailing from Asshai to the Iron Islands and doing weirwood stuff. And he watered Nagga's ribs with blood. So you see what I'm saying here. I do think weirwood can be reactivated, and I do think Nagga's ribs were magical. So yeah, let me know what you think of that in the comments, and check out the videos if you want the full story. But all of that is really weird. And then there's the question of why all this is conflated with a sea monster. And was there a sea monster? So yeah. Number 2, Nagga's ribs. Okay, the big moment. Number 1, there really can only be one choice. It's easy to overlook. We see it so much, but it is the wall. It's the weirdest and most wondrous thing in Westeros, by far, I think. It's a 700-foot tall wall of ice. It looks like the edge of a glacier on both sides, which means that it definitely needs magic to stand up, because if it was just ice, it would collapse. And the biggest question about the wall is who built it? The others would seem like the first choice because they're the ones who can manipulate ice magic, but why would the others build the wall, which does seem clearly meant to keep the others out of Westeros? It might be more than that, but it definitely does seem like it's doing that. So why would the others build a wall that keeps them and their whites out of Westeros, but which the humans can still cross and invade the others' territory north of the wall? And that doesn't really make sense. So if the others built it, there's a deep mystery there, which we can only guess at. And if the others didn't build it, then that's kind of even worse, because now we have to wonder who else can manipulate ice magic to the point of building the wall. Maybe the answer is just Children of the Forest Green Seers, but we've never seen them do anything like that, or even heard of them doing anything like that. Supposedly, Bran the Builder built the wall with the help of children and giants. So Green Seer magic does seem like it was involved, and there is the Black Gate and other weirwoods potentially under the wall. But really, the possibility staring us right in the face is that Bran the Builder was an ice wizard, and that's how he built the wall. There's a lot of clues about ice wizard Starks. Check out my Bran the Builder video, as well as my last hero video. But yeah, that's pretty insane. Bran the Builder, Stark ice wizard, building the wall with magic. That's way beyond anything that we've seen in the story so far. But at least that would make sense as far as keeping the others out. But then we have the fact that the wall also prevents dragons like Nana Vagar from crossing the wall. Oh, why would they want to keep me from crossing the wall? I don't understand that. That sounds like racism. Are they afraid I'm going to burn everything? Because, I mean, I would do that. I would burn that whole haunted forest right to the ground. Sorry to cut Nana Vagar off, but you really can't let her get started. But yeah, Queen Alysanne, of course, tried 3 times to fly Silverwing across the wall. And each time, Silverwing refused or maybe couldn't. And then the wall also seems to block Jon's warging sense of ghost. So there's multiple layers of magical wards and barriers going on at the wall. Dragons and others and dead things and warg telepathy all cut off by the wall. And then Melisandre walks up to it and says, it's a hinge of the world, which is cool. But it's going to make Melisandre's fire magic stronger, even though it's made out of ice. So that's weird. And then there's the question of what's under the ice. Is it more weirwood organisms like the Black Gate? Or is there perhaps some kind of stone under there? After all, George was inspired by Hadrian's Wall, which is a much more conventionally sized stone wall that cuts England like the wall cuts Westeros. So is there stone under there? Is there oily black stone under the wall? Or perhaps fused black stone? Because the great empire of the Dawn Dragonlords coming to Westeros would basically be all about Azor Ahai connecting to the last hero legend and fighting the others. So there may well have been dragons here during the time of the First Long Night, and that means there could be fused stone there as well. Maybe the ice blocks the dragons and the fused stone is what blocks the others. Who knows? And then finally, how will it get broken? It obviously does have to fall. But yeah, will it be a magic horn, the Horn of Joramun? How can a horn break a wall? Do the others have some way of breaking it? Will the Ice Dragon or Whited Viserion break it? And actually, I did like that on the show. I thought that was pretty friggin' cool when Viserion melted the wall with blue fire. I dug it. But that's probably not going to be the answer in the books, yeah. So the two things that I'll say about the fall of the wall is that, one, it's very much tied to Jon Snow's resurrection. There are just so many references to the wall being the end of the world, or what if it falls, or the weight of all that ice pressing down on me in Jon chapters. I think it's like 9 or 10 of them. So one of the reasons why the others might want to steal Jon's body is to break the wall with magic or something like that. Or maybe his resurrection will just coincide with its fall. But it is tied to Jon. And then the other thing I'll say about it is that I think it's going to get knocked down by a meteor strike. After all, if it was a meteor strike that caused the first long night, then it's probably going to be a meteor strike that causes the new long night. And I do think I have found specific foreshadowing that a meteor strike is going to be the thing that takes down the wall. And then just to backtrack to the Horn of Jormungand, I forgot, what does waking giants in the earth mean? The Horn of Jormungand breaks the wall by waking giants in the earth. Is that just a reference to an earthquake, or could that be the weirwood giants waking in the earth and doing a little shimmy under the wall and bringing it down? Or is it a reference to the others, the Nephilim giants who are sleeping in the north and under the mounds like the Sidhe? There's a lot of ways that quote could go. It is mysterious. So there you go. There are my 14 wonders of ancient Westeros. Let me know if you had fun. Let me know what you think of the ranking. And let me know if you'd like to see a wonders of Essos and Sothorios. Don't forget about Sothorios. So thanks a lot for watching. I've been David Lightbringer. Get your Nana Vagar shirts in the Bonfire store at the link below in the description. And you can also find links to all those videos I mentioned in the description as well. So cheers, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.